Would you indulge me for a moment? You know that it is a source of almost endless concern that when they conjure up a lie or a confected nonsense or a deliberately divisive piece of propaganda, the temptation is to completely ignore it, because when you talk about it, you inflate it. And yet, if you don't talk about it, it goes unchallenged. So it is clearly no coincidence that since Boris Johnson lied about it in the House of Commons, Keir Starmer has received death threats citing the completely false claim that he somehow failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile. That's what I mean. How many people... And I don't know how many death threats Keir Starmer has received. I might ask him on Monday, actually, when he joins me on stage at the Leicester Square Theatre for Full Disclosure Live. It's sold out, unfortunately, but the podcast will be out by the end of next week. I don't know how many of those people would have heard the story as a consequence of some people like me and you poo-pooing it. And, you know, it's not impossible, is it, that some people hadn't heard of it at all until they heard it being pulled apart by a programme like this. And they may not have, you know, there's no smoke without fire. They may have come away with that idea. I mean, this is what Johnson does. It's despicable to watch. He even smirked yesterday when he was asked about whether he felt any responsibility for the, I'd have thought, rather obvious fact that Keir Starmer's now getting death threats citing Jimmy Savile within days of Boris Johnson lying about Jimmy Savile and Keir Starmer in the House of Commons. So I've got this, you're not my therapist, I've got this constant tension with stories like this about making it worse, you know. And if you think I'm exaggerating, just think back to Brexit and how quickly people whose dreams had fallen apart and whose promises had been broken, how quickly they claimed that they were actually perfectly happy with what was happening because it left other people upset. You remember that? I mean, the whole idea of Remainer-tears. I think it's due a comeback, actually. They're so desperate for distractions from reality at the moment. But you think I'm exaggerating. It's so, and I overuse these words, binary and tribal and footballification, although I haven't used footballification that much recently. If you can build these, this is what a culture war is, right? And it's still very much taking shape in my own mind. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I am, if you like, in a ringside seat. It's an attempt to persuade people that they have an enemy. And if you've got an enemy, then you turn off some of your normal faculties of scrutiny and consideration. You know, it's a bit like My Country, Right or Wrong. And that's why I use the phrase footballification, because you know what it's like. Football, your team can never do any wrong and the other team can never do any right. It doesn't really matter what's happening on the pitch in terms of objectivity. So if you can get that into the voters, if you can get the voters to feel like an army, then you can get them to do whatever you want, or at least you can guarantee their support. You can bank on their support. This is categorically how Brexit happened and how Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. But what would be the new battlefront, you see? Because they can't really blame immigration anymore for their own inadequacies or for the fact that you're a bit skint. They can't blame the European Union because we've left it now. So these were all bogus behemoths that were blamed for the consequences, really, of an incredibly unequal economy, an incredibly unequal society. You've got a bloke in Aviemore lying in bed with his electric blanket on one because it's the only way he can keep warm in a country that's supposed to be the fifth or sixth biggest in the... And some of the people in charge can give themselves very favourable loans from their Cayman Islands-based company, or they can, if they were ever on their uppers, they can phone up their father-in-law who happens to be one of the richest men in the world in the Chancery of the Exchequer's case. So, you know, that idea is... It's the word I'm looking for. It's yeah, you're clearly not going to want to have a full and frank and open conversation about why things aren't great after 12 years of Tory rule, if you're a Tory, are you? I don't think that's controversial. If you're a Tory, contradict me. If after 12 years of Tory rule, with the cost of living crisis about to go through the roof, Brexit pretty much proving all of the points that were made by people who opposed it. That ship has sailed, by the way. I for the record, agree with Keir Starmer about the pointlessness at this stage in the political cycle of in any way floating the boat of rejoining the European Union. It's going to take a long time for pennies to drop or for people to admit their mistakes. And it's not Keir Starmer's job to try and speed up that process. It's his job to get into Downing Street to stop all the other stuff that's going on. So that idea there of what can the next battlefront be, because it can't be the economy, it can't be immigration anymore. That was a great battlefront, but it's over. You can muster up a little bit of anger with the refugees coming in on boats, but it's not exactly going to become an election defining issue. It can't become a war. What is there left? Can't be Brussels. Well, this culture war business just won't go away, will it? And Oliver Dowden, who is the chairman of the Conservative Party, a particularly insipid politician, I think, but there is a lot of competition in his defence. He has delivered a speech to a very pungently right-wing. Siobhan Benita, the former Liberal Democrat candidate for Mayor of London, has tweeted, "I am disgusted that Dowden spoke at this organisation which denies the climate emergency and opposes LGBTQ rights. I've never been more proud to be woke," she says. And that net zero is going to be one front on the culture war. It's even the same people. They're at the same address. They're just changing the name of their organisations. The pursuit of net zero carbon emissions in the hope of protecting the planet from imminent oblivion, that's the next thing that the people who sold you Brexit are going to be attacking, by the way, that they've already started. And the other battlefront, because I don't think that green taxes or a refusal to frack in your back garden, because it's always someone else's back garden where people are in favour of fracking. It's never your back garden. It's never their back garden. I don't think that's going to constitute a big enough battlefront. The claim that they got COVID done or whatever the nonsense that he comes out with now is, or that the vaccine rollout was the best in the world, is just contradictable with counting. And also the fact that we're not blind. We can see what's going on in other countries. We can read their figures. You'll get some mileage from that. You'll get some traction with nonsense about we couldn't have done this if we were in the European Union, which is a lie. Or we've got the most successful vaccine rollout in X, Y, and Z, which is a lie. Or that the growth is the best in the G7, which is the very best, a manipulation. Wages are going up faster. Wages are going up slower than prices are. So they can't fight on that battlefront. They might try. So it's got to be this thing about woke. It's coming back round again. And it works, doesn't it? It works. It never ceases to amaze me as someone who sort of is essentially an antidote to this sort of poison. But how cross people would get about the National Trust, publishing the history of the National Trust. How cross people would get about statues of slavers being taken down. How did that happen? I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, well, maybe not, actually, I'm being a bit naive, but the idea that slavery was a debatable subject, or that the veneration of slavers was a debatable subject, it's incredible, but it's really effective. And it's always got race at the heart of it, hasn't it? Almost all of it has got race at the heart of it. And that is what worries me most about the sort of shift from immigration or immigrants being the enemy. They're not, but of course you were persuaded, lots and lots of people were persuaded that they were, lots and lots of people still believe that they are, to an even more nebulous, vacuous notion of some sort of enemy within that spends too much time sticking up for the oppressed. And that's all I've got when I read about Oliver Dowden describing a woke psychodrama that it will take courage to resist, this woke psychodrama that is in danger of engulfing the West. Too many have fallen for the idea it is kind or virtuous to submit to these self-righteous dogmas. It is not. So either this is an indication of what the next battlefront will be, or this is a declaration of intent by Oliver Dowden that he could be, in the event of a leadership battle, he could be the candidate to wage war on the woke. And I am completely honestly telling you now, having been in a ringside seat of these stories and this attempt to confect a culture war, I still don't know what it is. I still don't know what it means. I interviewed a chap, a very prominent chap, who's always going on about the woke not long ago, and asked him for examples, with the caveat that you couldn't bring the trans debate into proceedings, because that is, I find it very complicated. I find it impossible to say anything about the trans debate that doesn't cause profound upset to somebody. And I don't like causing profound upset to people accidentally. I love doing it on purpose, but I don't like doing it accidentally. And I find it really hard. Oh, right, listen, I'm being cowardly. I find it really hard to square this circle, okay? That women have a very strong case for believing that something very precious is being taken away from them, and transgender women have a very strong case for feeling that they are being treated as second-class or third-class citizens. And I think both of those statements are true, which means I'm no use to anybody in this conversation and everybody hates me. So that's the cross I bear, and that's why I tend to leave trans conversations out of so-called culture war debates. It's why I talk about Black Lives Matter or the national trust or taking the knee or all the other areas that are supposed to be culture war. Reassuring words from Paul, as I still wrestle with that idea of whether even talking about it somehow inflates the nonsense. Paul says, if you don't talk about it, then it becomes a conspiracy. You could be right. So, what is it? That's it. What is it? You can speak to me as someone who subscribes to it or someone who finds it as sinister and mysterious as I do. The painful woke psychodrama that Oliver Dowden describes. I haven't been able to get hold of a copy of his speech. I've just got a couple of sound bites from it. We cannot be complacent about defending our values against this painful woke psychodrama. It will take courage to resist it. Every single time I see the phrase anti-woke on a Twitter profile, I read the ravings of a gibbering idiot. I really do. But maybe I've just been unlucky. I've rolled the Twitter dice and come up with two wands, come up with snake eyes when I needed a double six. We cannot be complacent about defending our values against this painful woke psychodrama. It will take courage to resist it. Too many have fallen for the idea it is kind or virtuous to submit to these self-righteous dogmas. It is not. 12 years in power, an 80-seat majority, a barefaced liar in Downing Street, parties being thrown while the rest of us couldn't go to funerals, and Oliver Dowden wants us to be most concerned at this moment in our island history about the painful woke psychodrama. And I don't know what he means, and it's possible that you do. Just help me out. 0345 6060 973. Here you go. Here are his examples of what is threatening the West. It is, when you pause for a moment, incredible that Vladimir Putin's troops are massed on the border of Ukraine, and Oliver Dowden, the chairman of the Conservative Party, is arguing that the real threat to the West is obsessing over pronouns or seeking to decolonize mathematics. I don't often do this as a phone-in question, but every now and then it seems the perfect inquiry. What is he talking about? 0345 6060 973. Conservative Party Chair Oliver Dowden has said the West should not be obsessing over pronouns or seeking to decolonize mathematics in a speech denouncing painful woke psychodrama. What is he talking about? And what are the people he is talking to, because it ain't me, what are they frightened of? Or, final question, we'll go for the hat trick, what does he want them to be frightened of? So what is he talking about? What are the people he is talking to frightened of? And if they're not frightened yet, it's the same question, that, isn't it? What does he want them to be frightened of? Because I've got nothing, except there's epic inequality in this world. We talked yesterday about inequality in the NHS. Hugely troubling, heartbreaking stories from people whose experience was defined entirely by their ethnicity. It's just a fact. It's all I've got is that he doesn't want us to be talking, acknowledging, or reporting on facts like that, which takes us back to Nadeem Zahawi wanting to go after teachers telling their pupils the truth because they don't like the truth. They don't like reality. When you defend a liar, the first thing you have to do is lie yourself. The second thing you have to do is attack the people telling the truth. And the third thing you have to do is get the truth off the table. Yesterday it was Nadeem Zahawi. Today it's the Conservative Party chair, Oliver Dowden. Unless you can actually tell me what the painful woke psychodrama engulfing the West is and why I, James O'Brien, should be terrified of it. As a starting point, Ruth in Bristol says, to me, woke means hollow gesture politics which have no tangible effect and are more for the self-promotion of the individual. Examples would include taking the knee, inspirational quotes written on bananas, etc. Okay, I disagree with you about taking the knee. I think that's been an incredible catalyst for conversation and change. But even if you were right, as you say, it's had no tangible effect. So what am I supposed to be frightened of? Something that has no tangible effect, Ruth? When was the last time you were frightened of something that has no tangible effect? What is Oliver Dowden talking about? And what is it about the woke psychodrama that has somehow swept the West, despite Donald Trump being in the White House and the Tories being in Downing Street for 12 years, that I should be fearful of? And if you want to have a crack at telling me what decolonising mathematics means, I'll give you the money myself. Stuart's in Lancaster to kick things off. Stuart, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of understanding of woke, I think it's got, lots of people sort of understand it in different ways. Now,
what do you think Oliver Dowden means when he talks about a woke psychodrama?
I honestly think what he's trying to do is swing back power their way, in terms of actually that you've got a culture of probably, a couple of generations now of people that have been brought up on the internet. They have their own circles. Information isn't transmitted to them in the same way that it might have been when me and you were kids. We used to have a newspaper that come through the door in the morning. Yeah. Used to come home in the evening. Your dad would put the 6 o'clock news on with Nicholas Witchell. That was your news. That was how information was relayed to you.
Right.
So my understanding is that what Dowden is obviously sort of doing is he's looking to combat this almost, if you will, the counterculture, and actually get back the power and attack.
But what would be the what is the stuff that people believe that Oliver Dowden is unhappy that they believe it, and is it true?
Anything that's not their narrative.
But that's a cop-out answer. Come on, what does that even mean? What is their narrative?
Well, if you don't control the news, if you do not control the narrative...
I don't need a lecture on that. I want to know what it is specifically that he wants to remove from public discourse. So yesterday, Nadeem Zahawi, when school children are shown the story about Boris Johnson throwing parties and lying about them, they conclude that he's a party-throwing liar who is a hypocrite, and that's made Nadeem Zahawi very unhappy, even though it's just true. So what is it that Oliver Dowden is unhappy about? What's the stuff he wants to excise?
I'm not even going to pretend that I have the answer to that.
What are you ringing me for then, man?
I'm ringing you, right. I rang up. Your guys put me off.
That's true. Don't throw them under a bus. Seriously.
No, honestly, I'm just wondering. My question was actually, how long have you actually heard the term woke?
For a couple of years, I think. Maybe a little bit more. Didn't it pop up in Spike Lee, I think, maybe? But I mean, as a pejorative, couple of years. As a pejorative, as a negative, a couple of years.
Well, I'm going to say I heard the term going back probably for maybe 5 or 6 years from a podcast that I used to listen to. And the guy used to sign off his podcast basically saying, stay woke. And my understanding is that you basically are aware, you're alert, you're actually you've got your eyes peeled, you're aware of what's going on around you.
That is, I think, the original meaning. And I've got a horrible feeling that's still the only meaning, even the people who pretend it's not, and they claim that it's become something else and it's become this and that, and virtue signalling and gesture politics and various other phrases popular with the Andrew Neil Spectator magazine. Actually, everyone agrees it's being alive to inequality and it's being aware of discrimination, which means, to be a bit kinder to you than I was a moment ago, the narrative that Oliver Dowden is seeking to protect is that there is no discrimination, there is no racism. Downing Street published a report stating precisely that, and there is no inequality. Everything is exactly as it should be. The rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate. God made them high and lowly, each one to their estate. So everyone else just calm down and keep.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually highly surprised. It was probably, I think it was sometime last summer. My mother-in-law, love dearly.
Yes, of course. Well done.
We're on national radio. She's a.
You're chucking them all under the bus today, aren't you? My colleagues, your own mother-in-law. Oh dear.
She's a mail reader, and
Right.
she said to me, we were having a meal at the table, and she said, "What is woke?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what are you using that term for? It's like...
Well, she's been told they're the enemy. It's like Nadine Dorries asking her colleagues what the customs union is because she kept losing arguments about why we should leave the customs union. They've been told it's an enemy, and they don't really know why. And that's human. That's why they're so good at this. Some of these characters, some of them are not very good at it. They're over there. They're coming to get you. Who? What? Why? Don't ask questions. Just run. If I march into a theatre and shout fire, right? The people that run for the door are not stupid, even though I'm lying. And if I'm getting a quid for everyone who rushes through the turnstile over there, or a click, then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go to another theatre up the road and shout fire. The people who stick around to see whether there's any smoke, they could be, if there was a fire, the most at risk. So this isn't the most powerful analogy ever, but it's one of my favourites. Because there's nothing stupid about running for the door. And I would say the same. And I know racism is a little bit different. But the immigration, like, these people here, they're going to steal your jobs, they're going to steal your children. They go, so you run for the hills, or you take up arms against them. There's no threat. Or if there is, it's minuscule and it's exaggerated enormously. But there is a logic, if you like, or almost an emotional logic to accepting immediately without question the invitation that you're in danger. So now the new threat, it's the woke psychodrama. But I don't know what it is. Joe's in Bolton. Do you know what it is, Joe?
Well, James, I don't even know. But I will give you one thing.
Go on.
What you were saying about the definition of the word woke. Isn't it ironic that every time you ask somebody, what does woke mean? It's never, oh, it is this. It's always, well, for me.
Yeah.
For me, I think. Well, sorry. When did you become a dictionary? You know what I mean?
I think I do. Yes. I mean, there's that objective original definition, which is simply being alive to discrimination and inequality. But then, for everybody who uses it as a negative, it means whatever they want it to mean, doesn't it?
And I always, and with topics like this, when it comes to the whole anti-woke thing, I just look back to your interview with Piers Morgan, in which you were talking about the whole woke agenda with him, and there was a point where I think you asked him, "What does woke mean?"
Yeah.
And he himself even said the dictionary definition, and he went out and said, "Oh, if that's the definition, then I'm woke. That's me. I'm woke. I am woke." But then he continues to peddle the idea that woke is not.
Well, I tried to get. I mean, he did. I know he's not here to fight his corner or to defend himself, and he did. I think get quite cross about an emoji of an egg being removed from a salad. Well, I did. I pushed him for examples. You listen. It's on tape, so I'm not gonna. I don't want to. But when you push people for examples, especially if you remove trans from the conversation, trans issues from the conversation, what is left?
Exactly. That's the thing. And at the end of the day, and I was saying to your producers, I'm actually somebody who kind of has come out of this whole anti-woke thing. To be honest with you, I'm somebody. I basically, for a good while, a couple of years back, was watching a lot of American right-wing content. You know, your Jordan Petersons, your Ben Shapiro's, your Stephen Crowder's. I'm sure you're aware of them.
I am, yes.
And you find that you start to be coerced into agreeing with things that you don't actually agree with, and you become very angry at things that you wouldn't normally care about. And I'm not going to lie, as to your question earlier as to what you were saying about how do the people that they're feeding this to feel? Yes. I imagine that a lot of them, not going to lie, I was there myself.
Go on.
I imagine a lot of them are just unsatisfied with their own life, and they need some kind of outlet to be able to focus that anger or that disgruntled.
It's perfectly natural, that, isn't it? It's perfectly normal, and the fewer questions you ask about whether that's a suitable repository for your anger, the better. The more effective the repository becomes. What broke the spell for you, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, to be honest with you, it was just one issue that I started to disagree with him on, and as I was saying to your guys, that was kind of the removal of the card that brought the house down. It was the abortion issue. To be honest with you, there came a point where I kind of. They got me in on the whole anti-trans thing, which again I am not. 100% not now. I listen, if somebody wants to call themselves he, she, they're none of my business. That's up to them, and I support whatever they want. I couldn't care less, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But the abortion thing, it basically came down to a kind of tug of war in my mind where I felt myself starting to agree with them. Oh yeah, abortion, it's not a great thing, is it? It's awful. It is murder. It is this. But then there was this other part of me that was saying, you know what, Joe, you don't believe this.
Yeah.
You don't actually believe this. And then it started to make me question everything else they were saying. And as soon as I started to do that, and I started to listen to other commentators on the other side, like yourself, Sam Cedar in America, it started to make me realise that at the end of the day, they just want to make you angry so that they can use you for political gain, make money off you.
Financial gain.
It's divide and conquer. And
it's as old as the hills, isn't it? It's just the words that change. For me, woke and political correctness are cousins, if not siblings. Joe, thank you. I'm late for the news, but I don't want you to feel that I'm cutting you off in your prime. Paul in the Cotswolds makes a great point. Can we stop using anti-woke to describe these awful people and call them what they are? Pro-discrimination. I think that's probably right, but you're welcome, as ever on this programme, because we're great believers in free speech, you're welcome to challenge Paul's description. It doesn't, anti-woke just means pro-discrimination, or pro-status quo, and then not the band. This is serious stuff. There's a painful woke psychodrama, and it is weakening democracy in the West, says chairman of the Conservative Party, no less, Oliver Dowden. And I, to my shame, despite my O-levels and my GCSEs, my AO levels and even my A levels and a degree, I have no idea what he's talking about. There's a painful woke psychodrama that is threatening democracy in the West. Tell me what that means on 0345 6060973. Speaking of phone-ins, Sadiq Khan will be here on Thursday to take your calls. If you get tired of the brilliant questions that I throw at him on a regular basis, then feel free to insert your own. But if you don't fancy phoning in because you're a little bit shy, or whatever the reason may be, you can go to lbc.co.uk, click on the Speak to Sadiq section, which is just a couple of mouse rolls down from the top, and submit your question there, and then I can ask it on your behalf, or depending on what you write there in the application, we can get in touch with you and make sure that you get on the show on Thursday. Alternatively, just wait until Thursday and ring in. That also works. Just trying to make as many different ways of getting your questions on the board as possible. No doubt we will be asking him about the Police Federation greeting the departure of Cressida Dick from the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police after an astonishing catalogue of catastrophes and scandals. The Police Federation have decided that's grounds to declare their loss of confidence in Sadiq Khan, which is going to be an interesting thing to ask him about. 11:38 is the time. So it's a threat to democracy in the West. Painful woke psychodrama. I kid you not. It's a threat to democracy in the West. And I, as someone who does this for a living and perhaps arrogantly thinks he's quite good at getting a grip and a grasp on issues, a threat to democracy in the West. I've got no idea what it is. What am I missing? Pete's in Rotherham. Pete, what have you got?
You're not going to like how I'm going to answer this, because I don't know what it means either.
Oh,
I know why they're using it.
Heads are going to roll.
I know why they're using it, though.
Go on, why?
Like get Brexit done, levelling up. It can mean anything they want it to mean.
Right.
Like, the last hour's conversation was based on cost of living. Now, the government want to deflect from that. They don't want to say it. So what they can say is it's not our fault. It's the problem of those people gluing themselves to roads, or those protesters preventing new.
That's woke, is it? Gluing yourself to a road is woke, is it?
Yeah, because it's what the left do. It's what the young people do. You look at some of the things that have been put on Twitter, they can say, oh, those NHS waiting times.
Yes.
That's because of the woke psychodrama, because someone's being paid £160,000 for a diversity inclusion officer.
You've been reading the Daily Mail, Pete, today, haven't you?
I have been reading the Daily Mail. I do it for fun.
To find out,
It's a little bit of emotional sadism on a morning. And that's what it is. That's why I'm using it, because it means everything and it means nothing.
How is it? Well, obviously it isn't a threat to democracy, but how do you end up thinking that a diversity officer, and the Mail were doing this 30 years ago, there used to be the job section in The Guardian from the kind of social worker. One day of the week it was media, another day of the week it was the public sector, and they'd pick out their adverts and have a little party about it and tell everybody to be furious. How and is it just simply thinking, well, if they're spending £160,000 on that, no wonder I can't see a doctor? It's that simple. Yeah,
it's that simple. And the reason why they're calling it a threat to democracy is because everyone everyone believes in democracy after 2016. Oh, it was a democratic vote of the people. So if we can say that this is anti-democratic, then hopefully they can grab some of those voters. They can say, well, we got your democratic wishes done, so we're the party of democracy. So come with us. We're the party of democracy. The left over there, they're the party of shaking things up. They're the party
all
of
this work.
Anti-democratic
woke, lefty Ramonas. All of these things work up to the point where you ask what the words mean. If you ask what the words mean, it all falls apart, which is why Nadeem Zahawi wants to collar all the teachers.
Yeah.
Don't ask what the words mean. Whatever you do, don't ask what the words mean.
Yep, but they'll have an answer.
Well, what would the answer be? If Oliver Dowden was here now and I said, how is the painful woke psychodrama a threat to Western democracy? And I'll tell you what, Ollie, we don't even have to mention that Putin's got 100,000 troops on the Ukrainian border, but just in terms of the real business that matters, the really important stuff, the threat to Western democracy posed by painful woke psychodrama, what are his greatest hits right now, off the top?
It will be environmentalists. It will be LGBT rights. It will be Black Lives Matter, because all of it is it's about we need to make sure that this country carries on doing what it always does. Yeah. And
even though I'm really unhappy with my place in society, I am a sworn enemy of any attempts to change it under the guise of improving it. That's the mad bit, right? That's because tying you in with the last caller, talking about Joe himself saying, I think the reason I fell for it, Joe in Bolton, was because I was pretty cross and miserable with my own lot. So even though I'm pretty cross and miserable with the way things are, I am a furious defender of the way things are.
Yep. Wow. Because it's been changed. It's been changed against you. You see your energy prices going up, and if someone says to you, those people that are gluing themselves to roads, they're the problems, your energy prices are going up, of course you're not going to want to change it. You see your prices going up, so you want to say, let's not carry on down that road. Let's go back to where we were. You see the numbers, the amount that diversity inclusion officers in the NHS, which are completely justified with how much settlements are for
not having it right. It's an expert job designed to save money for over getting sued for when things go wrong. You don't mention that in the article, whatever you do.
You see your NHS waiting list go up, and then you see these news reports about these people being hired, and you're like, well, those people are hired, and I can't get to see a doctor, therefore those people...
the two together, and we're back to Brexit. That video was doing the rounds yesterday, a particularly gross one, actually, about how the NHS would look if we left the European Union, and the myth being peddled by whoever funded it was that you'd be able to sort of waltz in. Every GP surgery would become a sort of Harley Street style outlet where you got treated like royalty and could see a doctor at the drop of a hat. I mean, it is odd, isn't it? That area there, that struck me there. That it combined Pete and Joe from those metropolitan liberal elite strongholds of Rotherham and Bolton. Pete and Joe just describing that combination of being vulnerable to this crap because you're unhappy, and maybe you're not unhappy, but you're vulnerable to this because you don't like the way things are, but you're being persuaded, or what people like Oliver Dowden are trying to persuade you to do, is to furiously defend the way things are. That's well, I guess that's cognitive dissonance, is it? Alex is in Basingstoke. Alex, what would you like to say?
Hello. Great to talk to you. I think your last caller said a lot of stuff I was going to say, but
okay.
It's nebulous. It doesn't mean anything. It's like a...
But it must mean something. It's a threat to democracy in the West, man. Wake up! Oh, wake.
Well, it's a boogeyman, isn't it?
I think it is. But I
point at and say, it's that thing. It's woke. It's bad. And then people use their own interpretation of what that is, and they don't like it. So...
And that's why you then end up with that kind of almost random list of people, for good or for ill, and some of them might be misguided and some of them might not, listing things that they think should be improved. That we should be protecting the planet more, or we should have less discrimination, or we should be kinder to each other, or whatever it might be. How dare you? That's the bit I don't know. I don't get that. I still don't. After all these years of chronicling it and reporting it and having the not always pleasant experience of asking people who've subscribed to it to explain themselves and listening to them fall apart in real time on the radio. But what are they frightened of?
Change. It's fundamentally,
But they don't like the way things are.
But it's better the way things are than a change that might be worse, so they can weaponize it. You can say, oh, things are bad now, but if Labour are in charge, they're really woke. They might institute stuff that you would like even less.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I might not like the way things are, but it's my way. I might not like it, but it's family, isn't it? It's a bit like family. You can criticise your own family, but you can't let other people criticise it. I know this sounds a little bit glib or simplistic, but compared to Oliver Dowden, it sounds like Plato's Symposium. Like you, I have no idea what Oliver Dowden is talking about. More to the point, neither does he. However, he does know that it will chime with a certain section of society. Ironically, he has to go all the way to America to spout this nonsense. If he said it in the UK, there would be more scrutiny, and he, as well as other politicians, would be forced to put flesh on the bones of their words. Well, Simon Clarke MP, who is Chief Secretary of the Treasury, no less, has tried to put flesh on the bones of their words, because he has tweeted, this is so important from Oliver Dowden, the West needs to recover self-confidence and belief in the values that made us. What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm not lacking self-confidence. I've got belief in the values that I hold dear. What does he mean? What are the values that we've lost? And will keep us prosperous and free. Moral relativism and crippling self-doubt only weaken us and embolden those who would extinguish freedom. I'll tell you now, and I'll tell you again, I'm very worried by this direction of traffic, because I know the F word is overused, and I'm probably guiltier than most of overusing it over the years, although, once again, I tell you, I was right about Trump. That, once you're defending a liar, and you're trying then to sort of dredge up historical myths to support your worldview, where is this crippling self-doubt that Simon Clarke feels? I don't feel it. Do you feel crippling self-doubt? Knowledge is power. Trying to keep knowledge away from the people is whatever the opposite of power is. Or rather, it keeps all the power with the politicians rather than with the people. He also doesn't seem to understand moral relativism, because moral relativism, and I did this at university, moral relativism is a way of excusing or explaining past actions according to the morality of the time. So moral relativism offers up a defence, for example, of slavery. And Simon Clarke and Jonathan Portes, the King's College academic, has spotted this, because just a couple of years ago he was tweeting, our history is complex, as is inevitably the case for any nation state of at least 1,200 years. Where's he getting 1,200 years from? And most people probably take the Norman Conquest as the beginning of or King Alfred. Is it an Anglo-Saxon? Is it an oblique Anglo-Saxon reference there from Simon Clarke? Anyway, he goes on, rewriting parts of that history or seeking to erase them because they are painful, or trying to impose today's morality on people from a different era does not bring enlightenment. So either he doesn't know what moral relativism means, or he's both in favour of it and opposed to it. And once again we find ourselves concluding that this really weird cant that is increasingly loud from people defending a proven liar is actually meaningless drivel designed to provoke and divide, which falls apart the minute you ask what they mean by the words that they use. Moral relativism emboldens those who would extinguish freedom. And yet also trying to impose today's morality regarding slavery or imperialism and racism on people from a different era does not bring enlightenment. It's so odd, isn't it? I genuinely do not begin to understand what you feel in the United Kingdom in 2022 is taken away from you when you learn that the bloke on that plinth in the town square, or Cecil Rhodes, or the people that made a ton of money in the sugar trade and still, when what is taken away from you in 2022 when you learn about how much of this country was built on slavery and exploitation? It's my country too. I don't love it any less. It's so bizarre. I tell you what, I'll give you a very warm welcome if you want to have a go at telling me what you feel is being taken away from you the more you learn about the realities of the empire and slavery. What are you surrendering? What are you losing? Because unless I'm misunderstanding Oliver Dowden and now Simon Clarke MP, they're kind of arguing that you shouldn't criticise. I mean, where do they sit on the Holocaust? Was that moral relativism? I mean, is that something that you can excuse, because well, it was a very different time then, and a lot of people felt very frightened of Jews and gypsies and homosexuals and trades unionists and socialists. I mean, I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. No one would do that. No one would defend the Nazis on the grounds that, well, if you were around in Nazi Germany, these were perfectly acceptable attitudes. You can't judge the Nazis by the standards of today. No one would do that, would they? So why do they do it with empire and slavery? God, it's so depressing how pathetic it all is when you actually look at it. How quickly it all falls apart when you tug on the slightest thread of what a single word might mean. Unless I'm the idiot here, and there is a grave threat to Western democracy being posed by the woke psychodrama. We're just struggling at the moment to find out what it is. Chris is in Tower Hamlets, a retired headmaster, no less. If you can't tell us, Chris, then who can?
Yeah, morning, James. Unfortunately, I'm a jobbing English teacher by trade, so I can't tell you what he means by the decolonisation of the maths curriculum. But what I can tell you is that on numerous occasions over the last year or two, I've been reading about the decolonisation of the English curriculum. And in particular, I'll cite two articles in the Sunday Times about their parents downgrading by teachers of the teaching of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a fantastic book, as you know. And Robert Halfron, no less, the Conservative chair of the Education Committee, describing it as one of the great books of all time, said it should be studied warts and all. And I had to write to him to point out that the reason it's not being taught any longer is because Michael Gove changed the key elements of the English curriculum so that it can't be taught as one of the main books.
Is that right? I'll take your word for it. You're paying more attention to this than I am. So they don't even know what they're supposed to be cross about, do they, from one day to the next?
Exactly.
That woke warrior Michael Gove was responsible because he wanted to make everything more English, right? So he got rid of an American writer. It has nothing to do with the subject matter, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it can still be set by exam boards.
But why are we studying Yanks when we could be studying, I don't know, Nadine Dorries has written 14 books. Is she on the curriculum yet? Because that'll be next.
Yeah, Jeffrey Archer's there, I think.
So you don't know either?
I just think it's part of a pattern. I think a number of your callers have got it spot on. It just sounds good and it sounds frightening. So, it's part of a bigger plot.
Why does it even sound frightening? I suppose you have to dress it up more and more with each iteration, don't you? So now it's a threat to Western democracy. Before that, it was just getting in the way of the football. And now it's a threat to Western democracy.
Yes.
I mean, how many statues would they have to pull down? How many statues of slavers would they have to pull down before Western democracy started to crumble, do you think?
Yeah, who knows? We'll find out, I guess.
Chris, thank you. And teacher. Do you want to have a go at decolonising mathematics? Does anyone know what that means? I haven't looked it up. Perhaps I should have done. But the decolonisation of mathematics is on the top of Ollie Dowden's hit list. What do we want? We want to get rid of the decolonisation of mathematics. What does that even mean? And why do you let them do this to you? Look at what's happened already. You've got a man in Downing Street who was throwing parties while you couldn't even go to your friend's funeral. Lying about it through his teeth, chucking anybody under a bus who comes near him, absolutely debasing every single... You want to talk about undermining Western democracy? What about the unlawful proroguing of Parliament? This man is the chairman of the Conservative Party. They sent Jacob Rees-Mogg to Balmoral to lie to the blinking Queen. What? But the real threat to Western democracy is the decolonisation of mathematics. Promising to break international law in a very limited and specific way, lying about the border in the Irish Sea, lying about what was going to happen to food prices, lying about what was going to happen to fuel prices. It's all on tape. All of that's good. The real threat we've got to face today is the decolonisation of mathematics. Do you know what upsets me the most? And if you listen on a vaguely regular basis, or if you've discovered me some time ago, you'll know this already. What I think as I get older depresses me the most, or saddens me the most, if that's the better phrase, is the fact that I no longer have any confidence that won't work. You'd think, all right, I can understand how they got away with that, but they're never going to get away with this. It's very much as if Johnson is remoulding the entire Conservative Party in his own image. You think, and I still naively think, well, that's got to be a breaking point. He can't come back from this. And then a couple of weeks pass and he does what he always does, which is obfuscate, distract, lie, set dogs on Keir Starmer, all of the rest of it, and he gets through another day and another day and another day, and like night follows day, 2 weeks down the line, the same people that were calling him for him to go from the backbench of his own party have started arguing, oh, it's no big deal really. Who didn't go to lots and lots of parties during lockdown? It's incredible to watch, and there is no schadenfreude whatsoever in being proved right, but you can't really argue that they won't get away with this one either, can you? I've got it, says Candid Floss. It was a typo. Dowden is saying decolumnisation of mathematics. He's saying that we're not allowed to use columns anymore. I like that joke. I think that works rather well. It certainly landed rather better with me than... where has it gone? The actual attempt to explain to me what the decolonisation of mathematics was. And it was done, I think, in entirely good faith. Decolonised maths rejects the redundant metaphysics of formal maths as inferior knowledge. It reverts to a common-sense practical philosophy of mathematics as a technique of approximate calculation for practical purposes, says Angela. I am 99% certain, and that is old maths, that Oliver Dowden is not doing... It's not doing... There's several words in that sentence I doubt he can spell. However, here we are. And thanks to Dave, who keeps an eye on the Google trends. And decolonisation in the United Kingdom has just gone off the cliffs in decolonisation on Google. People just trying to find out what it means because it's very bad and it's happening now. How do I know? Oliver Dowden said so.